That was their best game of the season, and they still got blown out. What the heck? And that's not the only thing that ticked me out about Dia de los Muertos night at the pond. We'll talk about that and more on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ay, ay, ay. Bienvenidos a Locked On Ducks. I'm just going to skip all that. I'm your host, Jason Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. Let's get right into it. This game against the Chicago Blackhawks on Dia de los Muertos night could not have gone worse. Typically, it's Dia de los Muertos night, and it's a day of celebration. And in years past, the Ducks have done well on these games. In fact, the Ducks have won, I think, 4 of the last 5 Dia de los Muertos nights. This one was by far the worst of them all. I know this because I've been covering the Ducks for a while, and I usually look forward to Dia de los Muertos night. And usually I get rewarded with what turns out to be a good game. 2 of those games have resulted in overtime wins. My favorite one still by far was El Capitan. Y'all remember that one. This is way back in 2019 when Ryan Getzlaf scored a game-winning overtime goal. Remember that? Remember how long ago that was? Yeah, that seemed like ancient history by now. But we're far from that. We're way far from that. In fact, this was even worse. So I guess my big takeaway from this one is despite playing well, and this was their most dominant game of the season. I'm going to use that word. Their most dominant game of the season, they still wound up short. They got a little bit goalied. They got some bad luck. They also had some really piss poor special teams play. So my big takeaway is twofold on this one. Let's talk about the domination of the Anaheim Ducks, even though they lost. The Ducks had their best offensive expected goals output of the season. They outshot the Blackhawks. Okay, they outshot them 40-29. All right, that's not super dominant. They've been outshot by more than that. But that's still a good sign for the Ducks that they shot the puck 40 times. What's a really good sign, if you want to look at a really good sign, is that they out-attempted the Chicago Blackhawks. You ready for this one? They out-attempted them 93-47. That is almost twice the amount. The Ducks have had this done to them several times this season, where the Ducks would get outshot like 98-30 or 90-40 something. Or 92-30 something, or 40 something. You get what I mean. So now it is flipped the other way, where the Ducks are the ones out attempting their opponents. 93-47. That's a lot, folks. As far as Ducks players that did most of the heavy lifting as far as shooting the puck, it was not Cutter Gauthier this time. No, would you believe that it was Cutter Gauthier. But second on this list, Ryan Strome. Cutter Gauthier had 12 shot attempts on this game. 12 of them. 2 of them hit the net. He's got to improve his aim a little bit more, I think, because he's missing way too many shots. But his individual expected goals was almost 1. Ryan Strome had 10 shot attempts. His individual expected goals was over 1. So he was expected to score a goal on this one. A couple times getting very close, but not going in. That's a sign. That's a thing, I guess. They've got to finish. They have got to learn how to finish plays. They can shoot the puck all they want. They can score all they want, but they just don't have that super killer finisher that other teams have. And this even goes back to what I talked about on the previous podcast. They just don't have the killer instinct that most teams do right now. And that is going to be of a big concern, is can they find that killer instinct? Can they find that someone that is going to just dominate at some point in the game? That is a concern. It really is. One other thing I want to kind of focus on here as far as Ducks being dominant is the amount of time they had in the offensive zone at times. There were periods in the game where they would have the puck in the offensive zone for at least 2 minutes. It would tire out the defense. And you would think the defense is getting tired. The Ducks are eventually going to score. Well, I mean, they had a couple go off the post on this one, so that one is bad luck. Cutter Gauthier had one go off the post on this one. That was actually really bad luck that the Ducks didn't score on a couple of occasions. That I will attest to puck luck. That happens. That happens more often than not, where puck luck is just going to plague whichever team they're playing. In fact, this is going to be kind of a weird one here. There is a miscellaneous category there on shots that hit the post or shots that otherwise should go in, does not go in. The Anaheim Ducks so far, they're not in the bottom of missed shots. They're not in the top either. They're right in the middle. They have missed 159 shots so far this season. Okay, that's a good amount. Given the amount of shots that the Ducks take, which is towards the bottom of the standings, for them to be in the middle of missed shots, yeah, that's a little bit unlucky. That's more than a little bit unlucky if you're the Anaheim Ducks. But as far as just missed shots or shots that hit the post, it seems to happen a lot. Just this season, it happens a lot. It does. So what does that mean? Well, I'm still looking for a killer instinct, but I'm also still looking for rebounds to finish. I mentioned finishing. The Ducks in close, their shot attempts in close are pretty bad. When you look at the differential, as far as like in close, the Ducks are the worst in the entire National Hockey League. The shot attempts like in close differential is minus 138 for the Anaheim Ducks, which is by far the worst in the National Hockey League. They're giving up 138 more in close shot attempts than anyone else. I'm trying to remain calm, but the stats don't lie. That's BAD bad. That is that's stinky. But what about just weird shots in general or shots that are off? Missed shots, bad. Shots off the post. There's been a few of them. And I will actually talk about that more on a separate podcast. But they're seeming to hit the post left and right. The other big takeaway on this one is going to be the special teams. Did you notice that the fans were booing the Ducks during the final two power plays? That's how bad this power play is for the Anaheim Ducks pretty much all season long. The only time the Ducks scored on the power play was the final one with 4 seconds left in the game. The Ducks had several opportunities. They were 1 for 5. That third one, the fans booed a lot. The fourth power play for the Ducks, the fourth one on this game, you could very, very audibly hear the boos to the point that even all the announcers are pointing out, here come the boo birds, or the Ducks fans showing their disapproval of the Ducks power play. And there was a lot of disapproval on this one. There was. What the Ducks need to fix is puck movement on the power play, especially on the first unit in this particular game. The first unit power play was not doing a whole lot. I even pointed out, like, where was the shots for that first unit? There was nothing there. Or someone like, I don't know, Mason McTavish would try to bring the puck up and it would get swiped away or it wouldn't cross the blue line. Then enter the second unit. The second unit with Cutter Gauthier and Trevor Zegras with a lot more movement. Yes, it is more chaotic and it isn't nearly as organized as the first power play, but there's still better movement and there's at least some shot attempts on net. At least there's some shots on net. And still nothing's going through. And I think the fans recognize that. You cannot just pass the puck around and around and around and around the horn and get nothing in return. You just cannot do that. So that's another big takeaway from this one. Maybe flip power play 1 and power play 2 for a game, just a game, and see what happens. See what happens, Greg Cronin. Try that. All right, we're going to head to the first intermission right now. Going to talk a little bit more in detail about the game that was. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from PrizePicks. And look, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Now, all you have to do is use at least 4 correct picks to win up to 100 times your money. That is right. PrizePicks is the best place, to join 10 million users and sign up today. And PrizePicks puts their members first because all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Because when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. That's really fast, isn't it? There's also weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download PrizePicks and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. We're also brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all, but to match with Indeed. You could join over the 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Let's talk about the game that was between the Anaheim Ducks and the Chicago Blackhawks on Dia de los Muertos night. There's no miracles here. No Viva la Capitan. No fancy overtime goals here. This was just domination by the Ducks that did not go through, and it ticked me off. The power play for the Ducks entering the game was at about a 15% clip. It's still about a 15 or 14% clip. But hey, that power play goal at the end counts, I guess. Oh, it counts. Fine. First period, this was all Ducks in the first 10 minutes. You would have thought they would have scored early on. And in fact, it felt like they were going to score early on. And they didn't. The Blackhawks scored first with about 7 minutes left. Isaac Phillips scored. Connor Bedard, his first assist of the game. Notice how I said this, his first assist of the game, making it 1-0 Chicago. And then Chicago's power play took over. Yes, I said that exactly. The power play took over for the Chicago Blackhawks. The Ducks PK was just bad on this one. I don't know what else to say except there was very little movement on that particular PK for the Ducks. Radko Gudas and Cam Fowler. I don't know. I just don't know. But Teuvo Teravainen scored on the power play with a couple minutes left in the period. All of a sudden it's 2-0 Chicago. And I could even hear the remarks on the radio side that it's a shame that the Ducks tried really hard to score that first goal because they've been doing so the last couple of games, scoring the first goal at least. They did outshoot the Blackhawks 14-11. They were, in fact, fairly dominant the first 10 minutes of the game. And then to just have the Blackhawks score 2 on them, especially that one on the power play, that kind of felt like a backbreaker at the time. Because it was right there. The Ducks out-attempted them 36-19 in that period. Yeah, 2-0. 2-0 early on. I made a self-remark after watching that first period The self-remark to myself was, how unlucky are... Oh, no, never mind. How bad is the penalty kill? How stagnant is it? And when is Radko Gudas going to wake up? He's the captain. He's got to wake up. I actually heard myself say that in my mind and actually wrote a note. Radko Gudas needs to wake up. There was a play that was right along the blue line that Radko Gudas just simply turned over. It was almost like an ole as you're bullfighting. He's got to get it together. Radko Gudas has had a bad start to the season. There's no way around it. It's a bad start. So he's got to figure it out pretty fast. Or unfortunately, one of my friends even said, is it his age showing? Like, what's going on with Gudas? I don't know. I don't know what's happening there. Second period, I would say much of the same, but at least the Ducks scored. Actually, no, they scored in the third. It was like after the third. Second period, the Ducks should have scored. That's what I meant to say. They should have scored in the second period. They were within an eyelash of cutting the lead in half multiple times. They out-attempted the Blackhawks again, and still nothing. So at this point, now they're getting goalied. They are out-attempting the Blackhawks. I didn't pay attention to the heat map, but several accounts showed the heat map after 2 periods and showed that the Ducks were mostly dominant in their own offensive zone. Mostly. And then we go to the third period. The Ducks at least did cut the lead in half. Brock McGinn, yes, the fourth line. As soon as that goal was scored, I said, the fourth line? Really? Yes, the fourth line. Really? So this was a bad bounce by the Blackhawks. Ross Johnston had a perfect shot on net and a great rebound by Brock McGinn to put it away. The fourth line. You could talk about the superstars all you want, but the fourth line getting things together, okay, we'll take it. So now it's a 3-1 game. Okay, maybe the Ducks can come back. Yeah, the next, about a 10-minute stretch, the Ducks were completely ambushing the Blackhawks. Now they're really getting goalied at this point. Right before that goal was scored, there was a power play that just stayed completely stagnant for the Ducks again. That felt like a game killer. That fourth power play right around the time of that first Ducks goal. No movement whatsoever. Then the Blackhawks scored late in the game with an empty net. Ryan Donato, or not an empty net yet, but it was Ryan Donato scoring on a nifty pass from Connor Bedard on kind of a broken play right in front of the net. So that made it 4-1 Chicago. Oh, by the way, Bedard also assisted on the other power play goal. So this was Connor Bedard's third assist of the game. Check that. Not just his third assist of the game, his third primary assist of the game. He's pulling a Trevor Zegras here. The Ducks did score late in the game, 4 seconds left on the power play. Mason McTavish scored on the power play. Was there any celebrating going on? Not really. Mason McTavish just put his arms up and then just kind of had this blank look like, oh, okay, we scored. It's 4-2. Okay, so we lose by 2 instead of 3. Yeah, the Ducks didn't look too happy scoring that goal. They felt like they should have scored that way earlier. There was still some booing going on during that goal, and there was definitely some booing after the game because the fans felt like they deserved better on this one, and they did. The Ducks probably deserved to win this game. I am not going to go out there and say this was their best effort of the season because I truly don't think it was their best effort of the season. I'm still going to give that award to the game at Madison Square Garden against the New York Rangers. That was their best game of the season. This was one of their best games of the season. I would say maybe their second or third best game of the season. But the fact that they lost in that fashion at home, I just can't do it. I can't see it. All right, we're going to go into the second intermission, and I'm not even close to pissed off yet. It's going to happen in the third segment. for a couple of very specific reasons. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from Built. Okay, real talk. We've all been there, feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. That's B-I-L-T. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation, like say to New York. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes. Redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value points currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. So earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's join, BILT.com/lockedonnhl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points with your rent payments today. We're also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. There's futures for this hockey season. Who's going to win the Stanley Cup? You can check it all out. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And once again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, gamble responsibly. Okay, this is going to get personal, folks. Before I get personal, Lukáš Dostál did give up 4 goals. He's still amongst the top goalies as far as goals saved for everyone in hockey this season. The #1 goalie for that, Igor Shesterkin, still above the ranks on all of that. But Dostal still doing a great job in general. He just had a bad game. Everybody has a bad game or two. It took a while for Dostal to have a bad game. This was it. I'm sure he will bounce back on his next game. I just wanted to get that out of the way before I get into very, very personal mode. This was the 5th Ducks Dia de los Muertos night. I felt that they could have done more on this one. They could have easily done more. It is turned not into a celebration. It is almost turned into a cash grab. Because the Ducks, at least before they would do this, they would have maybe 1 or 2 items. Now it's just like they're really going all out, throwing it at you. And they're focused more on the shopping. There is one particular aspect that actually made me kind of angry about Dia de los Muertos night. I did like the dancers. That was cool. The face painting, that was cool. Actually having a spot where you can pay your respects to those that have just passed. That was really cool. The ofrenda that they had, that I liked a lot. More teams need to have something like that. They need to have an ofrenda because there are a lot of fans out there, a lot of them like me, that need that celebration, you know? For those of you that are not familiar, so an ofrenda is like an offering, or in some cases an altar, where you have pictures or you write down words for those that have just passed on. The Firebirds, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, they did that recently for their Dia de los Muertos night, where they had a massive ofrendas. They had all the marigolds there. The Ducks one did look pretty cool. The Firebirds ones, theirs was massive. And I liked what we did is we had the ability to write down the names of those that have just passed. And you could do that all across. And I had to do that for a couple of family members that just passed on. Not going to get personal here, but having family members pass recently, that hit hard. That really hit home. So for me to have the ability to do that meant the world. So the Ducks did a decent job on their ofrenda. Now I'm going to get to the one thing or the things that upset me about this particular Dia de los Muertos. The merch looked cool. The hat giveaway was cool, but it felt like they were just really, really trying to get the fans to buy as much merch as possible. I get that. I get that it's a business and you're trying to make money, but don't try to jam it down our throats this year, because that's what it felt like at times. Now, my biggest by far criticism about this year's Dia de los Muertos. In years past, the Anaheim Ducks at least offered a Spanish language alternate to the Ducks' English language format or their English language broadcast. They did not do that this year. The Ducks have done that for the last 4 years, and at least it gave Latino fans like myself, it gave them an opportunity to hear the games in Spanish and hear someone talking about passing la disco, which, by the way, is the proper Spanish term for puck. I have a puck right here. This is la disco in Espanol. Why is it called la disco? Because it is shaped like a disc. That's why. It's a disc, a literal disc. By the way, yeah. They didn't have that. They did not have Spanish language, and we've actually had one of the Spanish language broadcasters on this very podcast. Season 1 of this podcast, I got to talk to Jesus Arate, who was the color commentator for that memorable Ducks game where Ryan Getzlaf scored an overtime goal to win the game. That kind of felt like the heyday of it all. That's still by far my favorite Dia de los Muertos game, and still one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done all time. If you feel like going all the way back to season 1, this is like episode 50 or 60. That was one of my favorite interviews, and that was 5+ years ago now that I did that. Still unforgettable. And I still talk to him once in a while. It is disappointing that the Ducks, if they reached out to someone and they couldn't do it or they refused, that's one thing. If they just didn't bother, that's another thing. So I would like to know what happened. Like, where was the breakdown there? Why are they not allowing the Ducks to have this alternate broadcast anymore? I would really like to know what happened there, because the Latino fans, they deserve at least some kind of alternate, just one night a year. I would like to have the Ducks show this, to at least give something to the fans, and they could not even do that this year. Because that is one of the broadcasts that I look forward the most to every season. Every season, I try to talk it up more and more and more that, oh, we're going to have a Spanish language broadcast. Notice that I did not do that this year. I didn't even bring it up all that much, because I never saw a news release. I never saw or heard anything that the Ducks were going to have a Spanish language broadcast. It never materialized. It never happened this year. The first time that has not happened since 2018. So they didn't do it. That to me is one of the hallmarks, because for someone like me, for someone that is a proud Latino, you want to try to appeal to a broader fan base. And why not appeal, even though it is a very small sector of the fan base? And I get that it is not a big part of the fan base, but there are still more than a handful of Latino fans or fans that are Spanish speakers that watch hockey. My family's among one of them, partially because I work in it. But I'm going to get very personal here. I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to come on and say this. I think our team, the Firebirds, did a much better job not only promoting their Dia de los Muertos, and yes, we had some gear, but we didn't shove it down throats. No, we did everything possible to make the fans, especially the Latino fans, very welcoming to the game, to the point where and I'm proud that I did this. I'm super proud that I did this. Not many or hardly any announcers in professional hockey can call a game in both English and Spanish on the PA mic. I'm very proud that I did that this season. I called the goals in both English and Spanish. How did I do that? Well, I would say Firebirds goal, and then when I repeat it, I would say golazo, pájaros de fuego. That's how I did it. And I even called all the penalties in both English and Spanish, and especially a game like that, our Dia de Muertos night, there was a lot of Spanish spoken, a lot. And that was something else. So I am proud that I got to do that. But the Ducks not doing that, not even on the radio side, it's disappointing. It just is. I hope they can do better on that next season. All right, we're going to wrap up right here. I want to thank you all for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, among others. You can find me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_Ducks. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there. Please be kind to one another. And Patos fly together.